Welcome to the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast brought to you by ProudMouth. I'm your host, Matt Halloran. Being your own loud is not new to marketing, but the mindset, strategies, and resources to help you get there are evolving faster than this industry is keeping up. It is time to find a new perspective on what works why and how to move your business forward. Listen as I interview guests to help you learn from them how to be your own loud. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. I love being able to interview smart people. It makes me really, really happy. I get to meet so many cool people through the podcast, and one of them is our guest today, Chip Munn. Now, he's not a normal CEO of a financial services company. His company is called Signature Wealth Strategies, and he's wildly successful. But he's also the host of the Maximum Advisor podcast, and our paths crossed, and we've had, 2 or 3 conversations, and he's just not only genuinely a good dude, but he's also doing some cool stuff, and that's what we're going to break down today. So Chip, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Now, let's start from now and then back up. So let's talk about what Signature Wealth Strategies is now. So how many advisors, branches, so on and so forth, and then we're gonna hit the rewind button.
Sure. So now we have 12 offices in 3 states, North and South Carolina, and Kentucky, just short of $2 billion in assets under management, about 50 team members, so 48, 49. We've been independent in the independent broker-dealer space for 5 years. So when we did that, just a brief rewind, we joined our independent broker-dealer back in 2016. We had just under 300 million. And from there until now, over the last 5 years, we're up about 6 times or so.
Okay. Was this your goal, brother? I mean, you hung your shingle as a financial advisor quite a while ago, mind you. I mean, you're not a spring chicken. I mean, neither of us are spring chickens anymore. When you did that, did you say, you know what? I want to own $1 billion freaking, help me with that.
So if we go all the way back, I was a 6th grade school teacher. About halfway through the year, I decided that I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew what I wasn't going to do, and that was teach school anymore. So I finished out the school year. It's a really weird thing. When you're a school teacher in about April, right about spring break, you have to tell them whether or not you're coming back. Incredibly awkward. I told them I wasn't coming back. I got called into the principal's office, literally told what a mistake I was making. And I thought I wanted to go to law school. My family lost our family farm. Literally, we're that group that lost our family farm due to the death tax. We had to sell the farm, pay the taxes. And I thought I wanted to go to law school after teaching, wanted to kind of get into estate planning so the other people wouldn't deal with some of the things that we had dealt with. So kind of fast forward, as it turns out, University of South Carolina does not let Clemson elementary education, I taught 6th grade, if I said that, elementary education majors are not their top pick for law school. So did not get in. My wife didn't want to move. We were in a place where, I knew that I could stock shelves at Rose's department store on 3rd shift, and I would rather do that than go back into a room of 12-year-olds. Read a book on mutual funds, took what I thought was a sales job, and felt like I could get into the planning arena and still help folks with the same thing just without having to go to law school. And so that's how I became a financial advisor. And then from there, it's just been a really interesting kind of growth path. But
the growth path is fascinating because going from being a 6th grade teacher now to running really a juggernaut in the south of the country, the southeast of the country. Is it just because doors just kept opening and you're like, yep, I'm going to walk through that? Because just so everybody knows, Chip and I happen to have the same quick start score. We're a 9, if you know what that means, which basically is, okay, do it yesterday. And any idea is something that we want to field. So how did you go from taking a sales job, really basic stuff, realizing that you can do financial planning, and how have you built that into all of these different team members, all of these different offices under and mind you, everybody, this is a great brand. So, I wouldn't have Chip on if his brand stunk. So you have a great brand, a great message. I want you to walk us through a little bit more on the growth pattern.
Most people didn't want to give their entire life savings to a 22-year-old former sixth grade school teacher. I convinced my now 22 years later, my partner to convince his father, who was the senior advisor in their team, to let me join them. They were old school stockbrokers. I said, well, I'll do the planning. You guys do the investments. And from there, one of the things that I've really, and it is a thread throughout everything that we've done, is that we're better together, and that kind of the two heads are better than one. But the more we work together, one of the things that I did back in the early 2000s, say 01, 02, was I read the book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I was on vacation, literally on the back of a paper plate at 3:00 in the morning. If you've read the book, it talks about basically drawing out your organizational chart and putting your name in all the boxes. So I did that. There were only 4 of us at the time, Scott and I, his dad, and our assistant. But I wrote out this big, and it had VP of operations, and it even, to go back that far, it even had somebody on the sheet was a cold caller. So that's how long ago it was that I made this. I still have a photocopy of I eventually threw the plate away, but I still have a photocopy of the plate. And I really, man, I just kind of took that and said, okay, this is how I think it ought to be. How do I elevate myself from some of the lower kind of responsibility things? How do I move myself up the ladder? And did the same with my partner. And so we've operated kind of from that, but really more from that mindset, which is that if the two of us, if I was good at planning, he was good at investments, if we were going to bring on another person, they needed to be good at something different. So somebody with compliance or 401k plans. And it really was the idea of building out something locally first that could work as a combined model. What we've done then after that has been, our office historically has been what I would call kind of the laboratory, the test kitchen, if you will, for new things. And then as we have perfected them to the extent that you perfect anything, as we have figured out what works, then being able to grow an organization where we can share that with other people and benefit from their ideas as well.
As you have continued to grow, because I know that a lot of our listeners think to themselves, wow, I would really love to have this sort of a footprint, right? What are some of the biggest drawbacks that you have found in this level of growth and this quickness of growth that you've had, at least, since you went independent from, what did you say, 300 million to what?
1.8, 1.9.
That's pretty big growth, dude, right? What are some of the biggest things that you're like, okay, hell, if I had a chance to do this over again, I wouldn't have made this mistake?
Well, the first thing I think in building any team that you have to be mindful of is kind of going back to the original, is the strengths and weaknesses. And I would say one of the things that became apparent to me relatively quickly is the difference between signing the back of a paycheck and the front of a paycheck. Two totally different experiences. For me, one of the best decisions that we made, and one that really accelerated our ability to grow without me killing myself, was bringing on professional management and understand the difference between leadership and management. And really, in order to scale, you need both. But if you've ever read the book Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, and I forget Mark's last name right off, but it talks about the visionary integrator mix. And so finding an integrator for me was really kind of, again, to quote the book, the rocket fuel for us being able to grow.
Well, hold on, Chip. How did you find that person? Because that's one of the biggest problems that I think inhibits or prohibits, I don't know which word I'm supposed to use there, people's success is that I've always referred to it as a number two. It's because you've got the visionary, and then you have to have the person who's going to be the glue, the implementer. For us here at ProudMouth, it's Lisa. Lisa's our COO. If it wasn't for her, we would be flying off the rails left and right. How in the heck did you find that person? And even more importantly, how did you feel comfortable delegating some of these bigger things to that person so that one, you could free up your time, and two, allow them to be who they want to be?
So the first thing, found them. We worked together at our old broker dealer. This individual, his name's Barry. Barry, our COO, was over operations and technology at our broker dealer, which had 400 advisors before we went independent. One of the things I would point out is we always think that on the prospecting, on the business development, new client side, this is a relationship business. One of the things that's easy to forget is that is also true when it comes to building a team. For me, one of the things that we didn't do in leaving our old broker dealer, not to say that there weren't hard feelings, right? Because that's just part of the deal, is we didn't burn on our end any bridges. So over time, when eventually Barry and several other executives left, formed a consulting group, and we asked them to come and evaluate. They had experience, right? Our chief legal officer at the old firm, now he's our general counsel. They had experience running a larger operation, bringing them in, kind of opening up the hood, letting them take a look. And after they came back to us with suggestions, we were able to articulate a vision that was exciting enough that they were willing to stop doing one-off consulting and join us for the ride. And it's been wonderful for us.
What do you think has been the key, finding that implementer, creating a support structure so that the vision of you and your partner can be continuously kind of sought after, building an internal culture, which is one of the biggest things that I think a lot of financial services professionals really miss, is they're like, oh, it's all about the client experience, but the people who you're signing the front of the check, as you said, they need to have a great experience too, because they can be your biggest advocates. Quick digression here, dude. I was working with this advisor when I was still consulting, and I was meeting with his number two. And I said, have you ever referred anybody to the firm? Oh no. Well, why is that? Oh, because I wouldn't refer anybody here. Oh, my heart. Oh, my heart. Chip, it was brutal, man. So I love the fact that you focus on that. But so part of ProudMouth right now is this idea of finding ways that people can accelerate their influence, whether that's through their marketing, through their growth and development as a company or whatever. But what do you think has been the way that because you've accelerated your influence very, very quickly. You are very influential. How did you make it so that people are like, I'm going to join that guy? Because you are the face of the company, right? I mean, I understand that you have a whole company and there's, executive team structure and all that. Chip is the face of the company. How do we get people to follow you? What did you do to be so interesting and motivational and looked at as an influencer to make people really want to hitch their wagon to you, brother?
So I think the key to influence is authenticity. I think ultimately, for good or bad, the fact that I'm the face of the company is not a particular. I don't know that my team would be all that. They let me be the voice. I'm not sure about the face, but in actuality, I think ultimately, right, any form of, I got sober 7.5 years ago. One of the things they talk about in 12-step meetings is attraction rather than promotion. And I think that's a big key to building a business. And I have an entire kind of general methodology of how I think you ought to go about that. But I think ultimately it's just about being yourself, being clear about where you're headed, and being willing to open up, be a little bit vulnerable, and just be you. And I think that I've had the good fortune of attracting, one of the last advisors that joined our group. In fact, the last advisor that's joined our group so far during the pandemic said, I feel like you built Signature just for me. And I think that resonated with me because that's how you would, our whole thing, Matt, when we started, we were one of the top, say 10 or 15 teams at our old firm, walked into our new independent broker dealer meeting, and it felt like there were 4,000 people in the room. We only had 400 advisors at the old place, and the only person I knew in the room was my recruiter. And so I went from going to these things, seeing kind of my people. Really, that was another catalyst for us. We had a hypothesis when we went independent on how we felt like we could grow, but that was a catalyst to do it sooner rather than later. was feeling like kind of that old Cheers, you wanted to go where everybody knows your name. It's the same kind of thing. We wanted to rebuild a culture where we had small groups of people and a community that we could lean on each other, which has been fantastic over the last year, is having a group that we could really lean on. But I think the key, going back to your original question, is the idea of attraction, being yourself. My granddad told me, my first wife and I, long story, we started dating when we were seniors in high school. And for our first Valentine's Day, I gave her a dozen roses. Now, they came from a grocery store, whatever it is you do from a senior in high school, but they were a dozen roses. My granddad looked at me when he saw me come up to the house before I went out on a date, and he said, "Son, don't start something you can't finish." And I think that that is equally true when meeting people and talking to them about potentially joining an organization, is don't start something you can't finish. Be you, again, however, whatever that means to you. I don't wear ties. I quit wearing ties when we kind of left the old world. And so when I don't wear ties when we meet, I mean, just be yourself. And I think that you'll attract the right kind of people. However many that is fine with me.
Sure. Oscar Wilde said, "You might as well be yourself because everybody else is taken." And I love that. And I think, and that's one of the neat things. And when we met originally, and as I've continued not just to get to know you, but now I'm starting to get to know some of the members of your team, and that also means that not everybody's going to like you, and you got to be cool with that, because, you want the right people to get on the bus. You want the right people in the right seats. And I think you've done a great job with that. But I don't think that still explains, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I don't think that explains this growth. You're a good dude. I got you, brother. I would love to, and I plan on continuing our relationship well past this podcast, but that doesn't explain whatever percent growth that is year over year. And all of these people wanted to hitch their wagon. What the hell are you doing to attract these people to your system and then having them stay?
If you don't mind, let me talk a little bit about what the system is, right? So essentially, there are, when I look at building a business, whether it's a practice or, because all Signature Wealth group, the group of advisors where advisors can affiliate, or we can do an acquisition of their practice, or however, usually that's kind of a progression, right? All that is an outspring of our original practice of the lab. When I look at building a business, kind of the methodology that I use, I call BASIS. And BASIS stands for build, which is your team, your vision, your culture. Get really clear about what it is that you're going to build. And then attract. So that's bringing in new clients, educate and motivate, which for me, educating and motivating is, you may call it middle of funnel in marketing terms. For me, that's where our podcast and blog come in, but our podcast is a big part of that. Is just whenever you're ready, here are some ways that we can help. And we continue to say that. That's the end of my podcast. If you were to listen to our client-facing podcast, that's the end. Whenever you're ready, here are 3 ways that we can help. And we go right into that. So kind of that attract part is picking a target market and at least one at a time, right? It doesn't have to be you're only going to work with dentists forever. That could be your thing. That's fine. I've found that for a lot of advisors, for the average advisor, that's hard to stick to. I'm a really practical dude. I can tell you that I'm going to walk 10 miles a day, but it's not happening. So I might as well just decide that I'll walk 1.5 miles 3 times a week, or whatever it is. So it gets into that attraction. And again, it's the same way then that we built Signature, is that we wanted to pick a target market. We are ideally positioned, I believe, to serve advisors between $50 and $250 million in assets under management who want to grow. That's it. If you want to align, grow, and monetize your practice, that's where we're at. That's the area where we believe we can take that stuff. So you build, attract, then systematize. So that's where all your systems come in, how you're going to build out your practice, your offer, your planning process, your portfolio management. And a lot of advisors, one of the things that we've had to learn Matt, in dealing with lots of practices is that's the area where most advisors are most fervent in their beliefs.
Oh, yeah.
They believe in their planning practice. They believe in their investment practice. So that's not something that folks who have affiliated with us, we don't get into that. They can invest. They handle that part of dealing with their clients themselves, because that's where most of us. That's how we came up. That's how we built our chops, our identity. For a long time, it was an investment thing. Then it was an investment and planning thing. Now it's holistic wealth management, or whatever you want to call it. But that's the part where we get hung up. But I won't say it's the least important part, but it's the part that if you want to scale, you can train other people to do that part. So you systematize, then the last two are invest. And by that, I don't mean municipal bonds or REITs. I mean, invest in your clients. So that is, we have some things that we do around that with the intention of nurturing lifetime relationships. And then finally is scale. So if you do those four things, the last one is scale, where you document everything, you staff up. I'm a big believer in staffing before the need. I can say that 100 times, but you will be sad oftentimes if you don't invest ahead of time. And then you get into the ability to have acquisitions.
Sure.
And so the inorganic growth comes after you've done these other things. And so that's how we've built Signature Wealth Group, is by understanding that systematized part, the running of the day-to-day practice. Most advisors are great at it. It's, it's kind of the next level of potentially commoditization, is that, so you have to work on your unique process. But those other parts of getting the team building just right, attracting the right people, and having, you mentioned, we've had a full-time marketing person for 4 of the 5 years that we've been independent, completely full-time. Now she has a staff of 3 people, but we believe that perception matters. And we believe that content matters. Building, attracting, investing in systematic ways of growing your business, and then scaling are the things that I think, if you want to go from, again, 50 to 250 million to $1 billion, is those other things that you really have to get right.
Okay. So I'm thinking that I'm hearing our listeners say, okay, so I joined the Signature Wealth Strategies, the Signature Wealth Group, and you're saying that you're going to give me the opportunity to scale my business, to do the 3 things. And I actually didn't write all of them down. What were the 3 things again?
Align.
There you go.
Grow. Yep. And monetize.
Okay. So stop. Thank you. How do you help them grow? How do you help them grow? Like, I get how you grow, but how are you empowering the advisors to grow?
It's a lot like the story that advisors tell their clients, right? We get paid in 3 ways. Yeah. The only way that we grow is for our advisors to grow. We are constantly, much like I talked about earlier, that lab. So the first thing I mentioned earlier, 3 parts: align. First is to help them get clear on their vision, have a documented, this is who we are and what we do as an office. Now, advisors can take on our Signature Wealth Strategies brand if that resonates with them. Most of them now have over time, so it's a process. But we have a culture document. We have all those things laid out, and if they resonate, then folks can just tag into that and utilize all of our stuff. Otherwise, we white label everything. But from an alignment standpoint, that is aligning you, your team, and your client, because that's our responsibility, particularly in times like this, is we lead our team, and our teams along with us lead our clients. So that's the first part. The second part is to grow. So in terms of growing, it comes from attracting the single target market that you've decided that you work with. So really dialing in on who it is that we're going after. We have advisors who've done all kinds of things. So for example, I've done a book, 2 podcasts, write for lots of different things. So there are lots of ways that all of those we're doing very systematically. We can reproduce all of that. If somebody wanted to write a book, we have a process for that. Podcast process, which our process, I think, going forward is going to be call ProudMouth, but to then have ways that folks can leverage that. And then the last one was monetize. And there are two ways that you can really monetize your practice. You can ramp up organically, so you can continue that growth. You can invest in your clients and drill deeper into those relationships, or you can go into inorganic growth. And we've done many acquisitions ourselves, so we have a lot of experience in all those different things. We really do a lot of, again, going back to the roots of some of our leadership team, we do a lot of coaching and consulting with our practices on where it is that they want to go next.
That you answered that beautifully. And that was exactly where I wanted to drill down there. And I'm going to summarize a little bit of that because I want to make sure that I'm proud mouthing / the context of our podcast. Cause I think everybody knows that our goal is when we get somebody like Chip on the podcast, that we want to kind of deconstruct their level of success, reverse engineer, and then explain it in maybe a little bit different way. Cause whatever, that's just how life works. The idea of being able to align yourself not only with your clients, but with your target market and with your offerings is freaking brilliant. And a lot of you guys are incongruent. You are totally incongruent. One thing says one thing and something says something else, and they're not working together. So getting somebody who has done this so many times to make sure that they're really clarifying that message is vital. Number two, making sure that you're and you guys are all going to get really tired of me saying this. It's all about a niche. And I think Chip just said something that is really important is it doesn't have to be a forever niche. You know what, Chip? I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that second part. It doesn't have to be a lifetime niche, right? Maybe you want to work with the dentists right now, and then you want to work with podiatrists, and then maybe you want to work with contractors. Don't care. But here's the thing. Is you have to have a very succinct message to get to those people. And because you know how to help people write books, you know how to help people podcast, you guys have great content that you already have for all of them. That really helps out. So I love the idea that those first two things, and then the scale component of it, or really like the acquisition and the monetization of it, I think a lot of people want to grow that way, dude. But I think a lot of people are really afraid because there's all sorts of outside consultants and people who say, I can help you with that. But you know what? They haven't done it. I mean, you guys have done this a bunch of times, knowing that if they're hitching their wagon to you, that they get all of those three things. I think you're kind of a juggernaut in this situation. You're going to just continue to gain more and more momentum. What do you think?
So one of the things when I think about scale, and we may have another conversation another time on scale. I enjoy talking about this, but I'm reminded of Blue Man Group. You're familiar?
Oh, yeah.
They did the first 1,300 shows with just 3 of them in an understudy, but the understudy never performed for the first 1,300 shows. And all of a sudden, one of them got hurt. The guy came in, and you all of a sudden saw that you can run this. And so from there on out, there were 4 of them, and one of them would always take a night off. Now they are in, I forget, 10 or 15 cities. They sold a Cirque du Soleil. But one of the things that when they interviewed the founders that they talked about was that part of leading the company was being willing to occasionally put on the paint.
That's powerful.
I know, right? It is, and that's the difference, though, between being an advisor, working with and leading an advisory group like this, being a consultant, and I've got a high level of respect for all of those folks.
Sure.
But for me, I still have about 100 families that I work with, very systematized. I've got associate advisors. You know, there's a way, but I have done this from the 3-person team to now, and every day I put on the paint. And I think that's the difference. And so when you're talking about, I'm trying to figure out and make this decision, I have a handful of advisors that I coach one-on-one, and that's the difference. It is that bringing in somebody who has done a circus show, who is a phenomenal athlete, is fine. But there's a big difference between that person and any of the people who put on the paint. And so that's a big, big difference.
Dude, put on the paint is such a powerful statement. I cannot wait to talk to my team about that tomorrow, because that's right. There's nothing in the world You can have the experience, you can have the knowledge, but if you have both, that's the big difference maker. Okay, so you have the Maximum Advisor podcast, which, by the way, we're gonna have in the show notes. Everybody needs to subscribe to that. It's freaking awesome. Okay, I want to thank you, one, because I knew you were going to be a great guest. Did you? I have a page of crap that I just wrote down from you that I'm actually going to bring to my team, which is why I'm so grateful for my job that I get to talk to people like you and interview them and learn from them. So I want to pay you back. I want to say thank you, not just personally. We're going to give you all sorts of shouts out on social. If somebody wants to work with you in any way, whether that's, learning more about Signature, you've got books, you got a book, which I have. Actually, I told you I don't have it anymore because I gave it to a friend of mine. What can I do for you? Tell everybody how they can engage you somehow, because you're a genuinely good person, and I wish you all the success in the world.
I appreciate that. The easiest place to find me is, you can go to chipmunn.com, which is simple enough. All my stuff kind of runs through there. But I'd love for people to check out the podcast. We're not for everybody. And I've heard you say a whole bunch of times that one of the good parts about having a podcast is that people can listen. They can listen in a place that's non-threatening and easy for them. And they can get a pretty clear idea who you are and who you aren't, and whether or not you're their kind of people. For anybody who would want to know anything about me, Signature Wealth Group, or anything like that, I think that the best place to start is to go over to Maximum Advisor. You can do it on iTunes or MaximumAdvisor.com. Check it out. We've interviewed a lot of people, Matt included. Yeah, it's a great way just to find out more. I think you get a really clear picture, Matt, of who I am and what I'm about via that medium of just having conversation with other people.
We're also going to make sure that we have a link to your book. You want to just talk about the book real quick?
So I have two. One, and the one that you're referring to, which there's another copy to you in the mail, is the Retirement Remix that came out March the 2nd. We then did a podcast off of that. So now everything on our client-facing side is driven towards and by that Retirement Remix concept. And then the other one, which I'd be happy to email to anybody for free, you can just send me an email, chip@maximumadvisor.com, is called Leap Before You Look. And it's my very brief, about 50 pages. It's my story of kind of growing and scaling the business. So it's a little more biopic in that, how did you go from sixth grade teacher? And then I've got another one on the basis method that'll be coming out soon called Get More Assets. So, who doesn't want to do that? But all that stuff's available, podcast, website, just check it out.
Dude, I didn't know you had an ebook. You didn't tell me that before. I would have. I want a copy of that because I love that story. That's why I asked you the story. I wanted to have everybody hear of this super cool journey that you took. So I will email you there, and I'll get a copy of the book too. Chip, dude, thank you so much. Please, everybody, subscribe to the Maximum Advisor podcast. He has great guests. Legit guests on there. He's a great host. Him and I were joking before we both hit record today. We both like being on the interviewing side of the mic a lot more than the interviewee. And I got to pay you back because I was on your show, and I jokingly and not really jokingly said, yeah, I'm way more comfortable interviewing people than I am being interviewed. He did a great job. Great interviewer, because here's the thing, everybody. I think one of the things that you can tell just from hearing him speak is, one, he cares, and two, he listens. And those are two things that I think a lot of us really are skills that we've forgotten, especially the listening component. When you know that somebody is genuinely listening and cares about what you have to say, I think that changes the game. And not only is that something that Chip does with his podcast, but I've met some of his team members now. They say the same thing. And it's nice to be surrounded by people like Chip. So Chip, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. I can't thank you enough, man.
Appreciate it, brother. It was great doing it. We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah. Well, you're coming back for scale. So I'm already made a note to, I'm having you come back. I'm probably going to have you be on our other podcast, though, the Be Your Own Loud podcast, because I really want to dive into the scale a little bit differently. It's a little bit different of an audience. But I want to thank Chip and everybody at Signature Wealth Group and Strategies, everybody who helps produce the Maximum Advisor podcast. I also want to thank Restream.io, who is our sponsor. Gosh, if you ever want to do live streaming, they are absolutely unbelievable. It's one of the best tools that we've found to truly scale your credibility, accelerate your influence, and get your voice out into the marketplace and really cover all bases with one click. So if you have not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you click that subscribe now button below. That way, every time we come out with a new podcast, will show up directly on your listening device. If you know anybody who'd be a great guest, go ahead and give me an email. You guys are probably already following me on social media, so just go ahead and DM me there. And finally, find a way for you to rise above the noise and to be your own loud. Stop being the best kept secret in your area. And the best way to do that is to create custom content, whether that's blogs, books, videos, podcasts, don't care. Just find a way for you to rise above the noise, because it is your responsibility as a professional to make sure that you're getting your voice out there and overcoming the substantial amount of misinformation that's in our marketplace specifically. All right, everybody, we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon. Thanks for listening to the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast, brought to you by ProudMouth. If you want to learn more about how you can be your own loud, visit our website, read our blog posts, attend our educational webinars, and sign up for our new Influence Accelerator Academy, where you too can learn how to truly be an influencer in your space. Have a wonderful day.